best experience I had on a movie was The Incredible Hulk. Just because it was the beginning of the MCU. I would be riding in elevators. I mean, our office was above Marvel's offices were above a Mercedes-Benz dealership. That it was such a grassroots type of a project at that time. Hello, my name is Darrin Denlinger. I am a storyboard artist in Hollywood, and I've been doing this for 25, 26 odd years on some of the biggest movies possible. I've been very fortunate to do that. And this is Chronicles of Podcast.
Hello world, Wednesday 13 here.
Yes, my friends, my name's John Mahon.
Hello everybody, I'm Ronnie LeDrew.
What's going on everybody, it's Tom.
And it's Jamie. Welcome to the Chronicles of Podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, this week we bring you a very special guest, our first guest of 2025. And we are setting the bar high for ourselves with this one. This week's guest is an award-winning storyboard artist working on movies like Pirates of the Caribbean, Die Hard 4, Avengers 1, 2, 3, 4, and even 5. This week's guest has helped many storytellers bring their vision to life. And this week he helps us bring our vision of a damn good podcast to life. Ladies and gents, put your hands together as we bring you the Chronicles of Darrin Denlinger.
Thank you very much. Wow, that was humbling.
That's the aim. That's the aim.
That's cool.
Before we really get into all the nitty gritty and all the good stuff, like how's your Saturday been so far?
You know what? I have not been up for very long. We've had late nights here over the holiday. A lot of party preparing. My wife likes to entertain, so we've been doing a lot of that.
Oh,
so
nice.
Be up until like 3 o'clock in the morning. So it's late morning. That'll stop, on Monday, but for right now, that's what we're doing.
Yeah, make the most of it. Why not?
Yeah, absolutely.
Considering you just said before we started this that you're a hermit, I'm intrigued if that is great for you or your idea of hell, to be honest.
My wife has. I mean, actually, in college, I was a little more outgoing. Once I started doing this job and started feeling, I could not work in an office. It was really difficult for me to, because I would be comparing myself to every amazing artist that was right next to me, and it would be torture. So I mean, a lot of times I couldn't help it. I had to be there, and it's not bad when I'm not watching somebody else draw, and then that's just pure torture. But since I've started boarding, I've worked more at home and have become, I don't want to say recluse, because I do get out sometimes, but I do enjoy. I could go a week without leaving the house without a problem.
Oh, damn. I mean, what have you been entertaining? Has there been any events or anything going on? Seeing family and friends?
A lot of family around here. My wife is from Puerto Rico, so we're gonna probably go down there next year. But we have bunch of friends around here, and not much family, but we do. Mari invites a lot of people over, which is very cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's kind of nice. It's not a bad life, I gotta tell you. I've been very lucky.
So the way we like to start these things is to take it right back to the start, back to the days of young Master Denlinger, you could say. What did you want to be when you were growing up? Has it always been like art and drawing for you, or was it something completely different in those early days?
I wanted to be a comic book artist when I was a kid. I would draw, and specifically, it was all Marvel all the time. That's all. I would draw comic book covers down to the comics code and the little icons in the upper left corner. I would love doing that. I wasn't great, but I loved. I mean, it was a solitary thing. I would have it would be 10 years old, had my little TV tray in front of the TV at Saturday nights with Carol Burnett and Bob Newhart and all that stuff, and watch it with my parents in the room. So it was and draw at the same time. So that was a really, really special memory for me.
Wow, that's incredible. So where did the actual love for art come from then? Well, how did you even get started? How did you even decide to start drawing?
I'm sure it was comics. I mean, I was a huge huge Marvel fan when I was a kid. I would collect, and not to like preserve or to sell, but just collect, because I loved, it would kill me if I didn't have if the sequence of numbers was missing something. That would just drive me nuts. So I'd have to go out and search for everything that's possible. And I loved that process. And the storytelling, I mean, the comic storytelling, I thought was just amazing. But it's not something I ever really studied. So I am very fearful of the idea of teaching at some point. A lot of my peers do it, especially with all the strikes and everything that have happened over the last few years. They have their classes. They have and it's just, I realized that don't I would really have to sit for a week to try to tell somebody else how to do what I'm doing. It's always very instinctive. I read a script, I see it, and that's pretty much it. And it's gotten me by for a good chunk of years. So I'm not complaining with that. And I lost track of what the initial question was.
Just about just where your love of art came from generally. So obviously, and then like what actually made you pick up a pencil or a pen or a paintbrush or I don't know, anything that you used to.
Yeah. Comics, art, and comics and drawing. Garfield too. Garfield was a big thing for me. I would draw Garfield every at school every day. So that was huge. And Far Side was big too.
So obviously, to go alongside of that, you're not known for working in the comic industry, it's the movie industry. So you work in. So where have you always been very passionate about movies? I know we pointed out your giant Blu-ray collection back there.
Oh, if I you don't the entire room is that stuff. So it's
wow.
I got a little corner that looks somewhat put together. Everything else is just is utter madness.
So where did the idea to put? Sorry, Cameron.
No. I was gonna say, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so where did the idea to bring those two loves together come from?
It was kind of convoluted. I loved movies as a kid as well. I mean, Superman the movie and Alien were like dozens of times. My dad would take me, would drive me a 40-minute drive to a theater to see Superman, I think at least 13 times. And quite in the last 10 or 11, he just dropped me off and I would go in there alone in the balcony and he'd come pick me up. But it was that scene of Christopher Reeve flying out of the Fortress of Solitude was just, pure magic to me. And the score and both those things. So I love that. That obviously was really tied to comics. And those were both very much loves. I never thought I was a particularly good artist. And when I was in college, actually, I started as an art major. Very first art class, my introductory art class, we had my first review, and this teacher just destroyed me. And to the point was, it's a good thing that art is not your major, is what I think he said. And that ended it. That ended art for me completely. For God, until I was in the last year of college, I storyboarded some. I went to San Diego State Film School, and it's undergrad. It wasn't a graduate program, but the films I would storyboard. I kind of they didn't have to be great, so I felt comfortable doing them, and I would storyboard like our last few films of our senior year, and that's kind of what started everything.
That's not. You mentioned then a love for the original Superman. I got to ask, obviously, the new trailer for the new one dropped a couple of weeks ago. What are your thoughts? Are you excited for it, or?
I've worked for James Gunn a lot. I'm sorry, not a lot. Just a lot for one movie. But yeah, no, I have total and complete trust in that guy's vision, and the trailer was wonderful. Just the utter audacity and courage to put crypto in there was just brilliant. I thought that was really nice. And yeah, all the behind the scenes stuff. Just the avalanche of characters they have in it. I'm really curious to see how that goes. But again, total trust in the guy. I think he's gonna knock it out of the park.
Absolutely. Like everyone went, who the hell are the Guardians of the Galaxy? And now look what happened to that franchise. So
I said, okay, that was the year I'd been working for Marvel for quite a bit, but the year of Winter Soldier and Guardians of the Galaxy. Winter Soldier, when I was asked to work on that, best Marvel movie ever. I was so happy to be a part of this. That's great. And then 3 months later, Guardians opens, and I went, God damn it, that is just insane. That is such it's an iconic movie from the get-go, from the first dance. The quill dance was just, I'd never seen something like that in a comics movie. And prior to it opening, I said, okay, this is the one that's going to kind of start the downfall of Marvel. It's going to be its first like not very successful movie. And yeah, I was wrong. So it was pretty amazing. And yeah, and that was all him too. That was all Gunn completely.
So how did you even get into this world of storyboarding? I know you mentioned then you did some in college, but was this something you set out to do, or was it sort of a happy accident?
I came up with I came from San Diego to LA with our class, our graduating class was the first one to really, as a group, come up to Los Angeles and try to make it in the. I mean, there was always individual people that would come up and do it, but most people kind of filtered out into like local TV, local filmmaking, and things like that in San Diego. But yeah, there was a good dozen of us that came up pretty much at the same time, and just tried to get whatever jobs we could up here. I was working. I bagged groceries to get myself through college, um, and then on a military base in Camp Pendleton military base. My dad was a Marine, and the last year I decided I got to do something that is somewhat in the film industry, and I got a job at the San Diego Film Commission. And it was the first introduction to that. I would go out and be location scouting out of college, and taking pictures of things for major Hollywood studios. Terminator 2 came down there, and I would take pictures of all these that big fight towards the end in the technical complex,
Yes.
where with the helicopter and all that stuff. They shot that in San Diego, and I think I took pictures of the location they chose. But it was just weird. I mean, to go from doing your 16 millimeter film productions at school to actually being able to see what movie making is kind of like around here. I mean, it's pre-production, so I didn't get a chance to see a whole lot. But we had I'm gonna go all over the place here. We had
Go for
a class in college where it was a production design class where the entire class was go out and find a professional production designer and tail him as much as him or her as much as possible and write a thesis paper on it. And that was the entire class. And I think a lot of people were doing things in San Diego. I'm sure there were some like Hollywood studio movies, but I swung for the fences and wrote a letter to Joe Nemec, the production designer on Terminator 2, after I'd done all the location scouting stuff with him, and he agreed to like get me on set and have look at let me look at everything up there in LA, and that was pretty brilliant. And but then I'm all over the place. But they after the film commission job, the head of the film commission there had some ties to LA, and had a relationship with the physical production head at Universal, and got me an internship and got me signed up for an internship there. And I turned that into an assistant job for a physical production executive, and that was my focus for the first 5 or 6 years. I wasn't even thinking about storyboarding. I was thinking, okay, I got to come up here to direct. I got to come up here to write, and I felt like being at a studio, seeing how everything is made, was probably my best chance of doing that. And I got insanely lucky to get hooked up with the people that I got hooked up with, and from then um, I followed the guy that got me a job at Universal. It was actually when I was when I was brought up, I was interviewed by an intern there, because they shoved the interview off to an intern, and it's and he was a good friend of mine called George Wang. And he did a movie. He directed a movie called Swimming with Sharks. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that, but it's a skewering of Hollywood, and it's about an assistant that takes his production executive boss hostage, and tortures him because of all the torturing that he had been done for the last few years. And it was which was if you haven't seen it, you got to see it. It's the movie that Kevin Spacey was the executive, and I think that was the year it was Swimming the Sharks and Usual Suspects came out the same year, I'm pretty sure. So he just like he just completely exploded from that. And that was a bigger role for him. I mean, that was a bigger, like, he was basically the star of, well, I guess he was the star of Usual Suspects, but that was more of an ensemble. Um anyway, the intern George Wang brought me in, and then I followed him for like 3 years. He went from interning to being the assistant of head of production at Universal. I was an assistant to one of the production executives there, and then when he left to go to work in creative production at Sony, when they were making when they were doing Last Action Hero and a lot of these big action movies, and put me in his place as the assistant to the head of physical production at Universal. And then when he left his job at Sony, he put me into that job too. And that job was quintessential 90s Hollywood stuff. I mean, it was like the era of, do you remember Heidi Fleiss? The Hollywood Madam Heidi Fleiss?
No.
The name sounds really
It was
familiar.
a huge scandal, and in Sony Pictures, the executives of Sony Pictures, that was all kind of embroiled in the whole thing. I was my boss was in Jackson Hole, like kayaking with stars, and a some kind of a National Enquirer type magazine had a front cover of this Hollywood Madam's phone book, of her contacts book, and there was the extension of our extension at the office was front and center, and I had no idea what that meant, but I was freaking terrified, and I had to get a hold of him to let him know, I don't know what's going on here, but you need to know this. And I was afraid that because this was already being a huge police investigation of this stuff, I was paranoid that we were being tapped. So I went down to a 7-Eleven close to the studio and put a ton of quarters in the payphone to get a hold of my boss in Jacksonville. And he and when I finally got a hold of him, told him all this stuff in a panicky voice, he just laughed it off. I don't, it was so funny, his nonchalantness, and did not give a crap about any of it. It was hilarious. But yeah, that was a fun era. That was I'm not going to name names because
Of course.
the movie Swimming with Sharks, the executive that Kevin Spacey played, it was always rumored that that was based on his boss, now my boss, and it was, and really it was just an amalgam of every Hollywood boss at the time. Joel Silver, agents at CAA. I mean, there were stories in there, like nightmare stories about getting phones and telephone books thrown at you if you didn't get the coffee right, that kind of stuff. And that was, they came up working for nightmare bosses, these executives, and when they came through the ranks, they felt this is a boot camp. This is, I'm doing you a favor by toughening you up. And these jobs were, I mean, that job was 24/7. I had a beeper. I would get beeps in the, late night on Saturdays and Sundays. I can't find my sunglasses, and I went to his house in Malibu and drove them out to LAX where he was waiting. It was, those are the kind of things that you would have to do. And the thing is, the guy's, I still have contact with him. He's a great guy now. He's mellowed out considerably, but it was just the way that Hollywood was at the time. And honestly, looking back at it, I would do all of that again. Although my wife now, we were engaged during that period, and she broke it off, a lot of it, because I mean I was just unavailable at all times, and it was and she saw the writing on the wall that this was, this isn't going to be the life I want to live, and so that was nightmarish. That said, I would have loved. I mean, I would have done it again in a heartbeat, because that whole these 5-year experience put me in contact with so many producers, assistants, agents. I had relationships with a lot of them, and so when I transferred over to storyboarding, I any production I wanted to be on, I knew somebody or knew somebody who knew somebody on that show, and that by far is the most important thing. I mean, you can, I mean, there are job listings there, LinkedIn has a ton of storyboard stuff, but almost every position on those movies are filled by people that are recommended by other people in the production. That's just that's the way, or they build enough of a reputation that they just go on and go from movie to movie to movie in that way. And so it's really hard to break into it cold. And I had the luck of having a good base of contacts before I even started. And the George Wang guy, the George Wang guy, he was best man at my wedding. He left to do.
We won't tell him.
And it was a big critical success, but it was an indie, so it wasn't any. I think that he had to, his contract had to he had to accelerate the rights. He had to give the rights up to everything in the movie, not just in order to get it made. And so, I Swimming with Sharks had a when streaming was hitting big, had a TV series based on it, and he had zero connection to it. It was so
No.
heartbreaking. And it was I think it was on, I forgot what it was, a streaming service that's not here anymore. But it was actually pretty good. It was really good. They gender swapped the assistants, and but it was this story from old Hollywood, told from the perspective of New Hollywood. So that was interesting. So yeah, he went off to direct another his second movie. That movie got him enough notice to get him a studio movie. And it was at Universal Studios, which was our old oh yeah, it was Universal Studios. And it was called Trojan War. And there was a good time where there was always competing movies like Armageddon and Deep Impact and Ants and Bugs Life. They were all these really similar movies that were rushing to release first, so they could drown out the other one. And there was actually a little battle between our movie Trojan War, which is about a high school kid looking for a condom at night, and like it was an after hours, or Scorsese's after hours type of a show. That was what it was modeled on. So it was this a crazy night in a nightmarish LA, running into a ton of different weird people in search of a condom, so he can be with his girlfriend. And there was a similar movie about that exact same thing that was in production at the same time. But anyway, he got that and asked me if I wanted to do something on it, and I said I wanted to storyboard. And that was basically the beginning of me shifting over to that. And I boarded for him. He had an Oscar-winning director of photography on this tiny, teen sex comedy. Dean Semler, who won the Oscar for Dances with Wolves, an amazing guy, Aussie guy, and he was going off to direct his first movie after Trojan War, and had me come along to storyboard that. So it just kind of snowballed and snowballed and snowballed. It went on from that situation. Man, I feel like I've been talking like crazy. I'm sorry, guys.
No, you're good. We like this. That's what we like.
Okay.
That's great.
Okay.
Do you remember what I said before, though, about people that say they don't talk and then constantly talk? I told you, didn't I?
I've been thinking about that for my entire way into it. I got to correct myself. That wasn't my start in storyboarding, professional storyboarding. I was after I left the Hollywood executive that was, the nightmare job. I temped for like 2 or 3 years. My wife and I were both temping. She was in the creative department, over the creative executives over at Fox, and was, didn't have a great experience there. So we were both temping, trying to find our way. And I happened to and during temping, I was kind of trying to get my feet, saying, I should try this boarding thing. And I would send like these horrible sample packs to storyboard agencies here, Famous Frames and Storyboarding, and rejected out of hand for the most part. One agent decided to give me a chance, and so, because all of his people were working, and so what they do is they would bring you on for one project, and you wouldn't be picked up by the agency, but this would be like a test. And I got a 1 day gig for the old Superman show, Lois and Clark.
Amazing.
And I was on set on a golf course, drawing a golf cart, drawing like all day on that set. And they loved it. All the storyboards are great. Everything was wonderful. I said, okay, this is the beginning. And the next day, the producer called the agent at Famous Frames, and they had to negotiate a kill fee because the boards were unusable, and they didn't want to pay the rate because they didn't get what they asked for, and the agency had to, and they had to pay basically, a fraction of the amount of what the rate would have been. Just to kind of, end this deal and make sure there's no hearts. But it was apparently, as much as everybody loved it on, the producers and the director loved it on set, it it was bull. And that is and they it was very funny. So that and the teacher killing my early career, early education as an art major was those things were heavy blows. And
That's backwards, so backwards. You guys making
Well,
it? Oh, you like it? They're not going to use it.
yeah, no, that's that you know that happens a lot, and it fosters a very untrusting attitude about, oh, never. I mean, and I'm an insecure guy to begin with, and so I'm always saying, yeah, they don't really mean that. I mean, I'm still constantly feel like after a job, this is the last job, I'm never gonna get hired again. And I've been doing this for freaking almost 30 years. Boarding alone. I mean, I've been in Hollywood since 1990s, early 1990s. So yeah, it's been a long haul, but I feel like it's going to end, at any moment. Once they figure out that I'm, in imposter syndrome and I don't know what I'm doing and I don't know why I keep getting hired because because I look at other people's art and say, oh my God, this is not even close. So I mean, the thing is, you haven't. I don't know if you guys have seen any of my stuff. I mean, I'm okay. And if I spend a lot of time, I can do a halfway decent panel. But there are these artists out here that just, don't even have to look, and they're sketching out these beautiful perspective accurate drawings that and it's just like second nature to them. And they go to Cal Arts, and they went to the art center and all these, wonderful art institutions, and then they come into storyboarding. And quite frankly, and so that was, I mean, I was always and still am incredibly intimidated by that. But I don't know. I still don't know why I'm at where I'm at, because it's just when I look at my stuff and somebody else's stuff, it's not even, there's no competition. And I've got two or three good friends that are storyboard artists that are like my best friends. And I'm afraid to recommend them for a movie I'm on, because I do not want to be sit side by side with their stuff. It's funny.
You must
You're
be
clear,
doing something right.
clear there for a reason, though. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
James
no,
said, you have to do something right. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
yeah, I wouldn't be so hard. It's plus technology and stuff has developed vastly in the last 15 odd years
Oh,
or
yeah.
so.
We're not going to be doing this in 5 years. I think there's, I mean, I don't know. I was terrified of AI for when I started my new gig 2 years ago, and that's when, and the company I'm working for is wants to be at the forefront of AI technology. And so I was looking at that. I was looking at all these storyboard AI programs, and I was terrified. I was saying, it's a good thing I'm at the tail end technically at the tail end of my career. But if I was up and coming, if I was a starting storyboard artist, or I was in the middle of my career with a baby and all that stuff, I would be terrified. And then right after that, Writers Guild strikes, actors strike.
Yeah.
And it's just, I mean, it is an absolute disaster for so many people out here that just, I mean, I've got friends who haven't worked in 9-10 months, a year even. And it's really harsh. It's the combination of productions going overseas, because that's the only way that studios can afford to make the movies right now. And the streaming implosion, and Google, I mean, Instagram and YouTube, and it's just there's always the sky is falling situation, especially with theatrical motion pictures. They always feel like it's at the tail end of its of its popularity. It's not going to be it's going to be replaced. Everything's evolving. People better buckle up. But then a Wicked comes out, and Inside Out 2, and then every year there's still these Deadpool to the new Deadpool, all these things, all these movies. Certain movies just explode, and the theatrical experience, I don't think, is going away. I think it's changing, and there's going to be less movies, but people want to do it. I think there's a communal element of going to a movie and of reacting in similar ways to, and seeing people react and laugh and get terrified around you. There's something about that is really special. I mean, I watch movies at home on a big, huge TV, and it approximates that, but it's not the same thing.
It's not the same at all. Like, I went to see Wicked in the cinema, and the reaction after the film ended, like the applause and the jovial atmosphere in the crowd, you don't get that at home.
No, you don't. And those kind of movies, I think, will be around forever.
Yeah.
I do think like they always say, like the mid the mid-range Hollywood drama is dead, but that it's not dead. It's just on Max, and it's on Netflix, and and they're still being made, and those movies cost as much as Hollywood, theatrical releases, and that's what I was afraid of. If everything goes to streaming, that all these budgets are going to be slashed, and I'm not going to be able to survive like on the money that you can make. But none of that's really changed that much at all. I've done, I mean, the last two movies I did after Deadpool are both streaming, and they're huge budget movies. So I don't know how long that'll last. I just want to eke out another 10 years doing this, or I always threaten about directing or doing something that's more substantial. But I've always been I've always really felt comfortable kind of working on someone else's vision. And I think that is what you really have to enjoy and be comfortable with doing this job. And that's always, I've always really liked hitting those marks and um being able to do that, being able to like get inside someone else's head and produce something that's exactly what I was looking for. That's the idea that I did not that I didn't articulate, but that pitch is fantastic. So it's that's always a great thing. But I think that if things keep going the way they're going, and what I'm working at a company as an in-house board artist now. So it's once that contract is up, I'm hoping that it gets renewed, but it may not, and I may be thrown back out there into the wild, and we'll see how things go then. But if the actual freelance world keeps going the way it is, it's not going to be tenable for board artists to continue doing what they're doing. I mean, I think all of advertising and most commercials are heavily use AI in their boarding process. So I don't, it hasn't filtered over to features yet, but they want it to. I don't think it ever will. I think directors don't, as much as the prospect of, we can give you 1,000 options for this and 1,000 options for that, and you can choose from it, so many great things that we can choose from. I found that directors don't really, I mean, that's not what they're looking for. They're looking to find someone who thinks like them, who can deliver the ideas that will fit in their their shoebox. And and I don't think that's going to change.
Okay.
Number one, they don't have time to look at 1,000 options. I mean, they're being pulled apart by a million different departments, phone calls, meetings all day long. They gotta have somebody to keep the ship, keep the train moving.
Absolutely. Before we talk more about like the projects you've been involved in, I did want to learn a bit more about storyboarding and what it is really, because people might be listening to this that aren't really aware. How exactly would you describe storyboarding? What is storyboarding?
That's a darn fine question. I mean, there are different ways of. I mean, there are different ways that we're used. Uh, the traditional thought is that a director will describe a sequence in detail and give you the shots, and all your job is to articulate what their vision is. And sometimes it's like that. James Gunn, it's like that. James Gunn comes to our meetings with this stack of note cards, and they're all doodles of his drawings. I mean, of shots. I mean, he's got the entire movie done like that. Like Ridley Graham's. I don't know if you've heard that term before, but he does the same thing too. He had Alien completely drawn out before, way before anything really started to happen, and then then a board artist comes in and pretties it up. That's one way that it's done. But usually it's getting inside a director's head, being able to think like them, and to we have a car a car chase where the car crashes into a train type of a thing, and there are a million different ways to approach that. And oh crap, sorry guys, my weird thing just came up on my screen. A million different ways to approach that, and your job is to find the way that they're looking for. and it's not as much of a crapshoot as you think it is. At least not in my experience. I can't. I'm going to answer your question before I get into this. I think that yes, storyboarding is to either pitch ideas to a studio to say, yeah, we want to make that movie. And you'll do like presentation boards, and a director will go in and have this is my vision of what I want to do to the movie. And often you'll do pitch boards for a director, and that is not like paid by studio; they're paying out of pocket, and going in to help them get the job. That's the funnest part. Well, I mean that, and then the development area where the script is not finalized, or a lot of times the scripts don't really um, skimp on the action sequences, or the sequences or the really visual heavy sequences, and just kind of leave it to the way that the concept designers and the stunt guys and visual effects are going to articulate it and visualize it. So they'll leave that stuff very vague, and then a storyboard artist will go in there with the director. They'll pitch ideas, like pitch beat ideas, and that is where I've lived most of my career. And it's great because you kind of are directing without having to deal with all the politics of directing, and dealing with having to articulate to actors what you want them to do. I mean, you are creating the movie on your own, in my office at home. And especially with animatics, which haven't been a thing for with it was very studios were very resistant to it, and producers were very resistant to it, because they felt, okay, we get the storyboards and we're going to take it to previs, which was always that like AI was going to be the storyboard killer. And as of like 2000, they started doing this stuff, I think.
So, something that really intrigues me on roles like yours, do you get brought on to do a whole project, or is it just like a few scenes per team? Like, how does it work in that sense?
Quite often you're brought on to deal with a particular action scene, or there's two or three sequences that the producer deems that there's going to be a lot of stunts here, a lot of visual effects here. We need to. That's what it was. The other job of a storyboard artist is to articulate the director's vision to everyone else on the crew. So
Yes.
so when you get on set, and they have a visual of what the director wants, and stunts know, what particular things they're going to have to do. Production design knows that we're going to see this section of this set and not all this stuff over here, so we don't have to spend any money dealing with any of that. And so that is the most functional version of the version for storyboards. And that is quite often that's probably the most common reason that board artists are brought on. I have thankfully not. I mean, I've thankfully been able to get into the more pitching ideas and creative element of it, general element of that stuff, and that's been my career at Marvel, and my career on the Fast and Furious movies. It's always been being brought on early, before everything is really formed, and being able to pipe in with creative ideas that help move things along, move the writing along, move the directing along. And now it's to the point where I'm not having to do. I still draw like crazy, but usually it's I'm in meetings with the writers and the directors and the creative executives, and then I go off and I think of a bunch of ideas for whatever section of the script that we can do, and I write a lot of stuff out, doodle like really rough things, and then go in, and my absolute worst nightmare of the job is having to pitch in a room. And there are people that are really good at that, and they will and the Avengers movie I'm on right now, the Disney board artist that is like heading the stuff up there, he's utterly brilliant with it. He acts out everything, and that's the way animation is. He came from animation, where you're in a room, you act energetically, and very entertainingly act out a sequence, that we're gonna do this, and then Human Torch is gonna go, do all these cool things and melt this window, and he'll take you through the entire sequence, and then everyone says, yeah, that's freaking awesome. Now, go off and draw that.
But doing what you do, are you given much creative freedom, or is it like the director wants this, or is it here's a few notes, do what you can?
It depends on who you work for. The Russo brothers, I was lucky to start with them on their first movies at Marvel, and have done virtually everything else with them. And so we have a shorthand, and yes, you're given, you're brought on. We have these characters. We have to get from A to B, go and take a pass at it, and let's and we'll we'll evolve things from that. So yeah, that I've been really lucky to be in that kind of situation, because it's not often. It's and different directors have different ways of working. I mean, as I said, James Gunn has it all figured out. I mean, on Guardians 2, I was able to interject ideas and put ideas in there and pitch them, but they were all within the very tight framework of the scenes that he had already created. And I got some of the stuff in there, but I was also able to just take his doodles and just kind of mindlessly be able to make a really detailed animatic out of something that I already knew was going to work. But yes, to answer your question, quite often I'm given stuff that is very very rough, very vague, and allowed to do a pass at it.
I was going to say, because like, how do you ensure that your work aligns with the director's vision?
That's a mystery to me.
Okay.
It's I either you click with somebody or you don't. I think that is the major reason. The major reason that I think that I've survived as long as I have is that I can kind of be in a room with the director and have them not want to shoot me in the head, which is, I mean, it's a personality thing where they feel comfortable and at ease, and they can and again they can explain something very vaguely and feel confident that you know what it is. So on Winter Soldier, I mean, the first few sequences I did, they could tell pretty quickly that I was in line with the kind of stuff that Anthony and Joe liked, and it just went from there. And then it became, we got to do this car chase in the freeway, go. That kind of stuff. But it's kind of been that way ever since. And how you're asking me how that I personally don't know. It's instinctive for me. It's again, if I were to teach, it would be horrible unless I sat and really analyzed what I do, but I really never have. I'll read something or I'll hear something, and I'll have a vision of what I want to see in my head, and I'll just, and then I'll create it from that. And there's no rhyme or reason. I mean, I get there are rules, there's like staying on the right side of the line during conversations. So everyone, one person's got to be looking at the left, then the other person's got to be looking towards the right to make the scene. You can't jump the line, or the audience won't necessarily know why they don't like what they're seeing, but they won't like what they're seeing. And so there are certain rules like that, but it really is just instinctive for me. I would really have to think about it to answer that, or to be articulate about it.
Yeah, it's almost like second nature. It's just almost like they just go words, and it all just like computes in here. And you're like, yeah, there you go.
I mean, I've watched a million movies, and I can't remember the names of people I meet at parties, but I can remember dialogue from a movie from 40 years. And or a particular sequence. And so I've got a big database that I can draw from and do quite often.
That's all. I tell you what, this conversation is making me appreciate what you do so much. Like, whenever I watch a film now, someone's like, the director of this, and I'm like, yeah, I want to know who storyboarded it. It's his vision, mate. He just signed off on it.
I don't want to tout too much. I believe we're the kind of dirty secret, and it's a certainly people say that too. Other board artists say that too. Is that our role is so far more like integrated with the entire production than where our credit ends up in the we're quite often next to the catering and things like that, which is not to say anything bad about catering, but in terms of I think we should be in the front credits quite often. I mean, it all depends on what you're brought on to do. As a matter of fact, Fury Road, the Mark Sexton, the board artist on that, I think he didn't get title credit, the his credit on the front of the movie, but at the end of the movie, it may not even had title credits. I forgot if it did, but he got these huge single board credit because because Miller wrote the movie with him. I mean, they wrote the movie in storyboards, and from what I understand, and then the script was made was written on that. So the whole movie was figured out in storyboards with George Miller and Mark Sexton and one other guy whose name I forget. All right, you want to come up now? Come on. There you go.
Oh,
There he is. And then his brother's down, staring daggers at me because he won't come up. He
You have
feels
two legs and two dogs, father.
Exactly. But yeah, I think that with the amount of influence and how many departments we touch and our work touches, this should be lauded a little bit more. I mean, and I think this is unfair because I think that all the directors I've worked for really appreciate and really respect what we do. But I think there's a lot of directors that can be um, insecure about the storyboard artists role in the whole thing because directors are the auteurs. It's their vision, they are in charge of everything. And I think the idea that a board artist that is majorly influential in the sequence is something that they don't particularly want to advertise. But that's not an experience I've ever had, but I do know that is from the complaints I've heard from other board artists. That's a big thing.
So I was wondering as well, like, because I was doing my research for this, I came across an article about some scenes you'd done on Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer that didn't get used. I mean, it
Yeah.
was the Fantastica and Doctor Doom's castle and stuff like
Yeah.
things like that. Like, do you get? I don't want to say emotionally attached, but you'll do something like, "This is so cool! I can't wait to see this." Ah, fuck, they dropped it. Like, do you have that sort of thing, or is it another day at the office?
Yeah. It doesn't bug me. Usually, when I'm happy with the sequence, then I'm totally cool with everything. I mean, they can drop it, they can do whatever they want. Usually, I'm not. Usually, I'm waiting for an attaboy from a director and say, "Oh my god, I did it." But if I'm sitting at home at 3 o'clock in the morning, which is when like I can crack things well, that and I'm happy with that, I don't care what happens to it after that. So yeah, that's stuff. That was a weird, really cool job because the good chunk of it for me was drawing these huge comic book splash panels and then drawing and then telling the story of that splash panel in storyboards that would pepper around like the main action. So it'd be a whole like papered like a page design thing, and they were printed out in these huge cardboards, and that was really cool. I've never done anything since then like that, but that was a blast. And yes, a lot of stuff wasn't used just because they couldn't. I mean, the vision that the director had was far bigger than the budget they had, but there was a 4-month period where it was this is not spending any money by having a board artist draw it. So that's always the thing too. It's like shoot for the stars because it's not costing us any money here doing it. And if it really works, we can fight for it and take money from other departments or other sequences and make that happen. But they will there's if I'm brought on early, there's a pie in the sky element to a lot of the stuff I do. It's always this has got to be something we've never seen before. This has got to be bigger than the last sequel that we did with this. It's always like, and then it inevitably always gets pared down or always gets there's a huge contraction period for all of it, even the Avengers movie. Even I mean, we did the Endgame final battle sequence. There's probably 4 more of those sequences in beats that we did that never made it anywhere that we could construct from the work that I was working with 3 other great board artists. And it's so usually more stuff that's left on the floor of what I do than what makes it in the movie. So I don't have an issue with that. I'm totally cool with it. Again, if I like it, then I can go away.
I bet as a fan though, because obviously you were a Marvel Comics fan growing up, you're just like, oh my
Yeah.
god, I could have seen the Fantastic Car. Ah.
Well, I mean, well, did you see the movie?
Yeah, it's been a while since I've watched it, but
The
yeah.
freaking design of that Fantastic Car, I cannot believe that was not like an enormous toy, because I thought that thing was so beautiful. And you know, well, the movie didn't do as well as the first one, and neither did. I mean, no one was really particularly happy with them. I think for Marvel fans, they're just waiting for, you know, the First Steps movie come out to do
Excited for that.
Fantastic Four justice. But I kind of like them. I loved Chris Evans's Human Torch. I thought that was really cool, and I thought they were all well cast. The Thing didn't look that bad to me. I thought that was cool. Yeah, I liked it, and especially that one, Silver Surfer, rocked. I mean, that whole design and the way that was executed was really well done. Really well done.
It's been a while since I've watched it, but I remember it being pretty good. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. And that stuff. I mean, I did a lot of stuff for that Silver Surfer Human Torch battle, and that was those are those big splash pages that I have. I don't know. Do you? I mean, do you have any of that stuff there?
Say again, sorry.
I mean, do you have access to any of that stuff? I can share my screen. I don't know if you want to do that.
Yeah, can do. That'd be great.
That is amazing, by the way.
There you go. Yeah, see, that stuff was fun. I don't think I've ever drawn better than that. That is because we had time too. It was a blast. But that particular thing is an absolute ripoff of a I forgot the artist's name, but I googled it, and it wasn't it was Silver Surfer in that position, and I kind of changed. I made him fighting Johnny Storm at that time, but it was I was so happy with that, but I was so afraid that it was going to be that I had to tell everybody this is a different. This was taken from a comic panel that I saw, but it was that one was a blast. Yeah, there's the Fantastic Car.
Oh, it's amazing.
And there we go. Yeah, so we would I would just take these major illustrations and then tell the story of what is happening down there within the boards that would flap around. They really that was very well received. And I thought that, you know, a lot of storyboard books are coming that I think that they're always this really straight-laced panel thing. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen if you don't mind.
Yeah,
Yeah, of course.
There we go. That they're very straight-laced, simply laid out. That I think that they could really benefit from doing something that is far more comic booky, and that was the whole attempt of that thing. So I'm pushing for that kind of stuff.
Did you expect that? Sorry, go on.
No, that's fine.
I was just going to change the subject. So I don't know if you were to carry on with where you were going before I change it.
I'm sure I was going to ask you a question.
Okay. Like when you were first brought onto the MCU to storyboard for them, did you ever think that these movies were going to be as huge and as massive as they've become?
Oh God, no, not even close. I mean, I was on Rise of the Silver Surfer, and then had a brief stint on a Die Hard reboot that was happening then, and then I was looking for a job, and the Incredible Hulk came up. A friend of mine was going to do it, couldn't do it, and I knew the writer on it, so I got myself in there just as a job. I wasn't particularly excited about it because I know Hulk was never my favorite character, and I felt like this is, you know, it's going to be okay. And then they were doing Iron Man at the same time. But we were shooting for. I know we were the second to shoot. Iron Man was first to shoot. The summer I was up in Toronto working on Incredible Hulk, and it was a great experience, but I just didn't expect much from it. They debuted the trailer for Iron Man, and that summer is when the summer that we saw the trailer for Iron Man was the summer of Transformers, and I said, this I don't. They're doing all of this stuff probably more elaborately in Transformers. I don't know how this works. I don't know how this is going to be anything. And yeah, no, I had no idea it was going to blow up. And even after 2 or 3 movies, I still didn't realize. I mean, I don't think anyone could. I doubt Kevin Feige even really was confident that this was going to work as well as it worked. But yeah, it was so the right place, the right time, and I do feel like someone is watching over me, because I mean, if I if I told that 10-year-old kid that was sitting in front of the TV watching the Carol Burnett show and drawing comic book covers that this is what you'd be doing, as a career, it would, that would floor him.
It was almost like you manifested it, Darren, when you were a child.
Hey, there feels like there's something going on. I want to believe in that kind of stuff, and I do feel like it's I've had a really blessed career in the sense that I have not had major stretches of not working. I became a storyboard board artist at Agbo Pictures, at Agbo Entertainment, the Joe Russo's company, Joe and Anthony Russo's company, right when the strikes hit, and I had a contract for 2 years, option for a third. Went through all those, didn't really board through them. I mean, my whole intent of being a part of the company is that it was a production company that had a story department, that had, that they had creative executives that were pitching movies to studios. And I felt like, okay, if I'm ever going to move on beyond boarding, this is the best opportunity to do that. And I, I never would have thought that I'd be like progressing the way I progressed. And I still feel like I'm 20, 30 years old, but I'm not. I mean, if I could technically like stop doing this in 5 years, if I wanted to. I don't have any intent to, but it's amazing that this has continued the way it has. And the MCU is such an enormous part of it. That and Fast and Furious movies. Those getting involved with both of those franchises was utter gold for me.
I was going to say, how do you deal with like the whole secrecy laws? And that's because obviously Avengers Doomsday is coming. Like, do you
I was ask about this?
Sorry, finish the question.
That's what I was going to say, because obviously, as you say, as a kid, you were such a massive comic book and Marvel fan. Like, now to be involved in the movies, like, it must be like, oh my God, there's so much I want to say, but I can't.
Oh, absolutely. What's weird about this one is it does feel like it's a job. Just like any other job, any other Marvel job, but realizing, when you see Robert Downey Jr. come out on Comic-Con stage and do all that, you realize that these things that you're, I'm in story meetings, and these things that you're pitching are going to have huge ramifications and huge, this audience reactions to these what right now are really simple things. And it's it's pretty wild. And I am not the best secret keeper. And I'm again blessed career because I've yet to really make a mistake. And I don't know what there one time I posted on my Instagram a animatic for a Black Widow Captain America fight in Civil War that didn't happen. And it was always after the movie's release. I feel like a movie's released, you can post anything I want, and that got picked up by some movie sites as Captain America Black Widow fight didn't that you've never seen, and Marvel Legal actually the only time anything happened. And it was a slap on the wrist. It was never it was not that big of a thing. And honestly, the creatives, I mean, from Kevin Feige on down, they wouldn't have given a crap. It was just the legality of doing it that the lawyers were making sure that everything was covered. So I get that. And again, it was just a slap on the wrist. So I get a little loose with it now. I will there's a Facebook group called Frame Dump that started out with like 200 board artists and has grown to I think over 10,000 across the world. And
wow.
It's insane. It's so cool. The mandate is you post one frame, only one frame, only one storyboard frame, and then say anything you want. And so it would be a forum for people's gripes and people's pitching for ideas and things like that. But it was such a smorgasbord of international storyboards that it's just, I mean, it's a gold mine, I think. And I took it when I became when I started on the group. I said I thought I'm going to post a frame from everything I've ever done in chronological order, and write a diary entry about them. and it grew into this huge thing for me. I mean, it was like a 120-page document that I made a PDF, and I gave it to my dad to kind of explain, this is what I do as a career. And it's once I got to the MCU, I mean, things would be releasing and I would be posting directly after release or when a trailer was released. That's the biggest um transgression I would make, is if something was in the trailer, I felt, yeah, I'm posting that. And I would do that. Because my thing was, it's Instagram. I mean, it's a Facebook group that at the time probably had 500 members during I think it was during an Avengers, the first Avengers, and so no one's seeing this, and I'm gonna post it. So I got kind of really cavalier about it. And on the Deadpool and Wolverine stuff recently, I kind of did the same thing. But now the group's grown to like 10,000 artists. And I got a comment from one of the board artists that, are you sure you should be doing this? And it was really funny that I'm thinking, dude, I've been doing this at Marvel for the last 16 years, and I kind of know where to, how to navigate that stuff. But there was a lot of fear over posting things too early or and there were never any secrets given out, but it was because the thing is, the Marvel legal and the Marvel NDAs are so enormous and so, ironclad that yeah, as an artist, you get kind of afraid of doing things. But I started before all that. I mean, there were NDAs, but I started before all that, so I kind of have not had that kind of fear.
So you kind of answered the question there. But I was going to say, like, with all these big secrets and hints and big moments, like, do you get told about them, or is it just like person appears and you just have to draw like a silhouette?
No,
No.
we are in the room. It's all. There's no code names, and yeah, no, it's. I mean, on Doomsday, yeah, there was an outline when I got brought on, and it was, it's bananas. I think it's gonna be pretty great. But it's yeah, and I gotta say, I'm still kind of giddy about being in that kind of situation and having this PDF document of this thing that's going to be a $1 billion movie in about 3 years. And there's something that's kind of really exciting about that.
It's going back to when you talk about being in the moment, that sort of thing. You mentioned Deadpool and Wolverine.
Yeah.
That moment when Hugh Jackman pulls the cowl over, I think everybody ejaculated at the same time.
And the funny thing about that is that I never saw the cowl thing until the movie. It was because that wasn't my sequence. Initially, on the sequence, the two sequences I did the very very end sequence when they were in the subway and they were doing the Time Ripper thing, and they were holding hands and doing all the thing. So I had the cowl on that. But the sequence I was spending most time on was the initial fight in the Void. So their initial introduction, and when they're beating the shit out of each other in front of the 20th Century Fox sign and the whole thing. That was
So good.
You got the two best scenes.
Really, and that idea just came out of the blue. I forgot, it was either Ryan Reynolds or it was the director that just said, yeah, we should, just kind of off the cuff said something about the 20th Century Fox logo, and that grew into that. And it was that's the funny thing about these creative deals, is that these creative like powwows or being up in the middle of the night, when an idea like that hits, there is no other way that sequence can be done. And in my mind, I mean, that is the absolute thrill of doing this stuff. It's when you hit upon this thing that on a sequence that's just you can't get a handle on, and then one little thing unlocks it, and then it all kind of falls together, and there's no other way that it could have possibly been put together. It's really, there's a magic to it that's really cool. And that is what, more than anything, that's what that's what you work for. And you're working for those moments like that. And the Deadpool stuff was definitely like that. A lot of stuff on Endgame, there were a lot of pitches that didn't make it in, but that I thought, that I'm gonna knock their socks off at this. And I'm sure they reacted well, but it's just the sheer volume of beats that they did for that final sequence, or that was pitched for that final sequence, that they had to keep it to, like, I mean, it comes down to the point where it's okay, this is going to be 15 minutes. And we just fit everything, so that they have to have a time limit. They have to, and the Russos are really good at knowing how, if it's going on too long or if it's too short. They're really good at, we got to keep it at this. We got to keep it at the 12 minutes. If we go a second longer, it's going to lose the magic. And so but it was but we were working on that sequence for months upon months, and it's those two movies, because I was on them for 2 years and back to back. And then there's some reshoot stuff that I did too. So there was a long time, and the majority of that was spent on the New York stuff at the beginning. I mean, are you guys really familiar with the
Man,
movies?
Endgame, I cried 5 times in the cinema of that film. I'm very
I'm
familiar.
sorry,
Yeah.
people like Infinity War. There's game that end was so
Oh,
that end, and then the reuniting of Stark and Tom Holland was
yeah.
just beautiful. That said, though, the Tom Holland turning to dust in Infinity War was tragic beyond belief. That was amazing. And I think that, I'm pretty sure that line was his. Pretty sure the "I don't want to go" was Tom Holland's. But so a lot of that magic stuff happens on set, especially with Robert Downey Jr. and he kind of I think he kind of promotes a lot of improv. And he does it obviously so incredibly well, but a lot of magic comes out of that. I don't even know if I Am Iron Man was the initial plan. I don't think that was the initial plan. I think
Beautiful, though.
I think
Beautiful.
again, that's one of those situations where there's no other line that he could say. This is the only line that's possible that he could say. This is it. And I think that came up on set. And another one, I didn't work on Ragnarok, but the "he's a friend from work" thing.
Yes.
That from what I understand was a pitch from one of the the heads of department's kids that were on set, and said,
Really?
yes. And again, that there's no other line that would work there. That is utter perfection. That was the best thing ever.
Oh, it's incredible. But obviously, we've talked about these amazing, successful movies you've worked on. But there's obviously a flip side to that, in the sense of I saw you worked on the new Blade movie, and obviously that's been shelved. We don't know what's going on with that. How many of those projects is that you've worked on that just never saw the light of day in the end?
That's probably the most prominent. I do have hope that that's going to be done. I don't know if it's going to be done in the way that we were doing it, but because I mean that was 3 directors ago and 4 or 5 writers ago. So I don't know. It's weird. I got to say that's a weird one, that because they really, when they say they're going to do something, the whole Kevin Feige world over there, it gets done. I think there are very few, like, things unraveling, and that's the biggest one that I've seen that has been problematic, and I really can't tell why. It's so weird. I mean, I'm amazed that they were able to make fun of it in Deadpool. I mean, I'm number one. I was amazed that was allowed, and it was great. It was another one of those great moments, man. I mean, to the point where I thought, okay, maybe they are going to shelve this and they're going to go back to Wesley Snipes. They're going to do something with him. But who knows what the future of that is. But I mean, he was so well received in Deadpool. I am sure there's talks about something. Yeah, with the multiverse. I mean, anything. I mean, thankfully, I think it's ending. They're trying to give it a definitive end, and it should. I mean, when it started, it was like, oh my God, we can see, alternate versions of all these things, and it was incredibly exciting. And then it kind of started to dilute things, because no one's ever really gone, and there's always a way to bring people back, and it loses a lot of emotional impact. And I think, and it's so crossed over to so many different forms of entertainment. And DC. Well, the funny thing is, I think that the whole Infinity, Crisis on whatever the DC version of it. They
Yes.
feel like they're kind of similar. I
Mm.
mean, in terms of how they're dealing with the multiverse, in the comics. And so, I mean, but I don't know much. I've never really read much DC, so I don't know that story other than the animated movies that I watch occasionally. Um, so it's a really compelling way of mode of storytelling that I thought was really, and in spite in No Way Home, I thought that that was a great way of making it incredibly emotional and work really well. And people complain about the fact that it feels like it's nostalgia, it's just nostalgia bait, and but there was a lot of emotional impact for them for Garfield and Maguire to be there. I think that the scene on the roof when they're telling him about yeah I had an Aunt May and I had a, I had in the similar experiences. I thought that was really really well done. And you can't do that stuff without without what the multiverse that people are complaining about. But it has to have an end, and I think that it will at one point. We'll see. I know a lot of people complain about it.
I enjoy it. Who cares if it's nostalgia bait? No,
Yeah.
nostalgia bait. Like we all love it. It makes us smile.
Well,
Isn't that what cinema's supposed to do? Make you smile.
your initial question about whether about things that haven't been made.
Oh yeah, that's what I was saying.
I have well I've done plenty of things. I've done plenty of pitch boards for directors who didn't get the job or it didn't happen. There was, I mean, I did a version of, remember Collateral, the Tom Cruise and Michael Mann?
Jamie Foxx. Yeah.
I did a version of that, a pitch boards for that for another director, and it was great. I thought it was such a, and it was an entirely different. It was the same type of beats, but it was an entirely different type of movie. I mean, the Tom Cruise character was nowhere, not even close to what we eventually got on screen, which I thought was great. But it's weird. I mean, it's cool having really detailed boards for a version of a movie that did get made, but got made by different people and in a different way, and that's cool. That was one. I did some yeah, it's the pitch boards that quite often are, very very few of them get actually done. And but the movies I actually work on, there's few that have been derailed and not made.
I meant to ask this way back, but we moved on. So you mentioned that your dad was a Marine.
Yeah.
Incredible, by the way. What did they think of your career choice?
Well, I was supposed to be a doctor initially.
Okay.
When I was 12 years old, and then saw a footage of a surgery and no fucking way am I doing that. There's no way I could do that in my life. I was a really I started, I was a really great student. I was a valedictorian in high school, but that didn't start until like the beginning of high school. I was not a particularly great student before that. I don't, and that's just, I don't think that they really thought that it could be a viable career, but but he was incredibly supportive of it and did not put any kind of roadblocks in front of it at all. I mean, because also it helped that during the time that I was getting interested in it, I was getting straight A's in school and I was doing well, and I got to college, and so there was very little to complain about. But and then they moved away, and the whole film career thing started in earnest, and they didn't have to see it every day. So they were supportive. But skeptical. I mean, I wish my mom passed in 2008, and we were very much in tune in terms of terms of the things that we liked. And as much as I love Marvel Comics, I mean, my biggest love is horror. And so I was introduced to Stephen King from my mom's book, stealing her books stealing Sam's Lot off her bedside and reading that and not sleeping for a long time. We lived next to a golf course. So there was this, so you'd look out, there'd be mist over the golf course at night, and you'd see things, and I'd see things in there, and it was I mean, it was terrifying, but just so great. I have great memories of that stuff. Yes, they were supportive. And by the time that it really sunk in what I was doing well. So that was fine.
And you got to do House of a Thousand Corpses.
I did the whole
I
Rob
was
Zombie.
Nah.
There's a bucket list element to it all. And that was working with him definitely was when it was on reshoot, so I wasn't on the main shoot at all, but they reshot the entire ending, so I was involved with that, so that was cool. And the other one though is, I mean, Salem's Lot, favorite book, and I
yeah.
lobbied to get on the new reboot of Salem's Lot, the Gary Doberman one that premiered on Max, and so that was the holy grail for me to be able to work on that and to be as involved in that as I was. And it was because the Gary Doberman had the love for the material that I did, and really, and he brought back, I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with the book or the movies, but he brought back scenes or did scenes that the first two incarnations did not do, that were the cornerstone of the book for me. And they were for him too. So it felt there was this kismet between us, and it was that was a really great experience. And I was so bummed that it just took forever for it to get to released. And I honestly thought, because it was in the middle of that period where Warner's were shelving movies that already were shot and ready to go. Like Batgirl was a big, there's a Looney Tunes thing that was like that. And I thought, this has taken years for this to, find a release window, and it's gone. It's not gonna be made. So I was very happy to see it released. It needed to be another 2 hours longer. And that there was a reason it was a miniseries, or it was two miniseries, because it's just, there's too much story in there for it to really not feel rushed, and it did feel rushed. I'm sure that it felt for him too. But that said, it was a blast. It was a blast to see, because I was in sequences all through that and Dungeons and Dragons were the two that I was just in lockstep with the directors, touched every sequence, and was just, it was just an amazing pitch process. Everything I did that seemed like they liked, and it was a beautiful work experience. And I think that Dungeons and Dragons is criminally underrated. I think it's a great movie, and those two guys are just fantastic directors and writers.
yet to see Dungeons and Dragons, but I've heard really good
Oh,
things about it. I need to watch it.
you will love it. I mean, I knew nothing about Dungeons and Dragons, and well, I mean, I knew it existed. I knew, the board game, but I never played it. Didn't know anything about it, and they did. It was a college thing for them, and it brought me into that world. But it wasn't. It was so Princess Bride, and yeah, I think Princess Bride is the biggest touchstone for it in terms of tone, in terms of the storytelling. And it's a special movie. You should definitely watch
Yeah,
it.
I do need to watch it. But
Yeah.
also, we spoke a lot about storyboarding, but in recent years, you've worked on animatics as well.
Yep.
So, what exactly is the difference of animatics and storyboarding?
Well, animatic are animated storyboards. So and I've always approached storyboarding that way. I draw way too many panels for a particular shot, just because I want to see the character I mean, usually it's this angle, you have a character here, you have a character there. It doesn't matter if they go off camera, if they do something else. All you need to do is show what kind of how much of the set's being shown, what the blocking is right there, and that's pretty much all you do. But I needed to see the scene play out. I want to look at storyboards and see the story played out, and that a lot of times you're not asked to do that, or you don't need to do that. But animatics were the way for, that was the perfect way of doing that. And I was allowed the time at Marvel to do 60 panels for a tracking shot in Iron Man 3 on the stewardess going through the Air Force One plane. And it was God, I don't even know if they chopped that up, but it was initially looked at as a oneer that would show the entire geography of the plane, and she would take you through the whole thing. And it ended up being, I think it was like 70 panels, and it was like fully animated. I mean, it was an little animated movie. And you could play with sound, you could play with all the elements of filmmaking, acting even. I mean, you would pose out the characters and let them act. And that is the dream. And that was, honestly, that was the ability to actually truly direct and not have to deal with people. So that And it was but it killed me for a while too, because it is a long process. And when you're not, and it especially when you're doing them as detailed as I was doing them. And that was on it was on Thor, on my experience on Thor, where I met Federico D'Alessandro, and he was a board artist that kind of introduced me to what animatics can be. I mean, his are still, I mean, he still does all the time, were just these works of art, and they were an animated movie from beginning to end that he created just from drawing, and it's just a beautiful thing, and I always was trying to emulate that. And now it's kind of got me in trouble, because I a lot of times my speed isn't the greatest, because I'm doing way too many panels. Hold on, the dog needs to be let in again. Dude, chill. There you go.
Hey, you're back.
And it's the perfect form. I think a lot of board artists feel like it's, that you're being asked to do other people's jobs, and we should be paid for that. And I get that, but we're kind of being paid for the amount of time we're spending on something. It's not that, I mean, it's not like well, maybe I'm short selling it, but it's not that you're doing other people, that you're bringing to the table more skills than just, drawing and putting together a sequence. But I just love doing it. That's the only way I ever want to present anything now. But it's not as prominent in the stuff I'm doing anymore, at Agbo, and it's just because of the speed thing, and you really need to get things going.
Yeah.
But long story short, yeah, that was when I was doing that at Marvel as prominently as I was, that was the apex mountain for me.
Amazing. Obviously, I've just realised the time. So
Yeah.
we've been talking. I could talk to you all day, my friend. This has been absolutely fascinating to me. Last thing for myself, obviously, looking back at your career as a whole, when you look back at it, are there any particular moments or projects that stand out to you? Like, that's a damn good day at the office. This is why I do what I do. Are there any moments?
Yeah. Well, I mean, meeting Joe Russo for the first time, being was because that was just so insanely impactful in the progression of my career. But the best experience I had on a movie was The Incredible Hulk. Just because, it was the beginning of the MCU. I would be riding in elevators. I mean, our office was above, Marvel's offices were above a Mercedes-Benz dealership. That it was such a grassroots type of a project at that time. And so the first part of production, I was there doing that, and they were doing Iron Man, I think, at a different floor. But so it was just feeling like, this is Marvel Comics. They're making their own movies, and this is very cool. I still didn't think it was going to last for very long. But and then during production, I was brought up to Toronto, which is, I mean, maybe it's just personal, but it was the best city I've ever been in, and it was such an amazing experience of working spring through fall in a beautiful city that were having film festivals, that with a great crew of people, and the director Louis Leterrier was just, I mean, he's he's magic. He's just a fantastic person to work for, and he brings you to so many. He trusts you so creatively that it's just a joy to be there. It's a lot of responsibility, but it's just a joy to be around. That's the one. I've had many great movies. I've yet to have really any really bad experiences. I mean, I had one with a director who, gave me the "you'll never work in this town again" type thing, because I left the project 4 months after I was supposed to leave the project, but 2 months before, because I had other commitments before he wanted me to leave, and so it was, he got really mad at me for that. But that's pretty much it. There's a lot of complaints from a lot of people about executives and producers that don't get what we do, but I've ran into a lot of people that do get what we do, so it's good.
It's phenomenal. And as I said earlier, I've walked out with such a massive appreciation for what you guys do. So I hope people that hear this have the same thing, because it is absolutely incredible. The things we enjoy wouldn't be where they are if it wasn't for you and the people that do the job you do. So,
well, if you want to interview more people, I got a list for them. I got a list for you if you want to get more more in the weeds of this stuff, because there's some epic artists out here doing this stuff.
That'd be incredible.
Yes, please, Darrin. Thank you.
Yes, please. Yeah.
All right.
Mr. Stevens, any more questions for our wonderful guest?
I have one more for you, Darrin, before you toddle off and enjoy the rest of your day. When you first started this journey, sat with your TV tray, watching TV, drawing your Marvel comics in, did you ever think this is where you would be today?
No, not even close. No, it was even in college. I wasn't. I mean, I wasn't confident. I knew that I wanted to, work on Hollywood movies. I knew that was a thing, but I didn't know how to get there. And I didn't think that was going to be a thing. High school, definitely not. I was taking art. I had a good art instructor at high school that kind of really encouraged me. But no, it was never formed. Definitely not when I was a kid. I was living on a military base, and I never thought that far ahead. But there was I am a warrior, so there was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. There was that. Once I started thinking about things seriously, then it was like, yeah, what can I possibly do? And it did feel like I fell into a lot of this stuff.
Well, long may it rain, long may you carry on until you can no more, shall we say?
I have every intention to.
Darrin, any plugs, social medias, websites? Where can people find all about you out in the world?
I've got an Instagram, but again, it's mostly personal. I mean, I've got all my animatics and boards on that thing, so I guess that's something. What's funny is I'll send it to you, because I don't even know what my handle is. That's it. I'm active on Instagram, but that's the other stuff is family, FaceTime, Facebook type stuff. But it's that's for us.
Incredible.
Darrin, thank you. Seriously though, thank you so much for your time. You've been getting this planned for months and months. So it means the world that you came and sat and chatted to us. So thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Have the best rest of your day, my friend, and take care of yourself, and we'll speak soon.
Thank you so much, sir.
Cheers, fella.
Thank you so much, Darrin.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.